Hey there, fellow travelers. Mark here with Wolters World. Today we're heading to the capital, Washington, D.C. From what not to do around the monuments, to hidden gems, food insights, and how to handle the local vibe. Hello, escalator culture. We've got everything you need to know about Washington, D.C. So let's get started with 100-ish hours of Washington, D.C. And the one don't that every single person that lives and works in DC wants every single tourist to know is don't stand on the left when you're going on the metro escalators. Look, it's stand right, walk left. Because I know you're a tourist and I'm a tourist and we want to see these things and enjoy stuff and look around, but everybody else, they've got to be going to work or coming back from work and all kinds of stuff. So just do me a favor, don't stand on the left, okay? Make sure you stand on the right, walk on the left, okay? Now, some other don'ts I have for the metro is don't be afraid to take the metro when you are here in DC. It is pretty clean. I mean, I know the locals will say it's not, but compared to other metros I've been on around the world, it's actually pretty clean. It goes a lot of places you want to go, and it's super simple to use, okay? So don't be afraid to use it, but also don't expect it to go late night, okay? So make sure you know when your last train is going, wherever you're going to be, whether it's your hotel or the restaurant or the bar you're going to go to, so you have an idea for that. Also, don't eat on the metro. You're not supposed to do that, okay? So don't eat on the metro. And you'll notice that maybe don't talk so loudly on the metro, because when people are going to work, it's actually kind of chill on the metro. So just a heads up for that one. Now, another don't I have for you as a tourist is one, don't drive or try to take the metro or anything during the peak rush hour times, because it is insanely packed, okay? So in the morning before like 9:30, don't bother driving, don't bother taking the metro. The Smithsonian's don't open until 10 anyway. Let everyone else get to work and then take things, because then it's actually kind of calm, okay? But aside from that, like during the rush hour times, it's like hell on wheels here, okay? Another thing, when you are driving, you'll notice with the traffic, sometimes it stops, so it gets stuck in the crossways of the streets. Don't block the box when you're there, okay? You don't want to do that, because that can cause some problems. And when you're walking around, one of the things you need to realize is it's not just tourists that are here. I mean, there's tons of tourists, yes, but the locals are going to work, they're doing things, and what'll happen is tourists will stop in the middle of the sidewalk to take a picture, because there's tons of monuments, there's tons of museums, tons of cool stuff to take a picture of here in DC, but don't stop in the middle of the sidewalk. Step to the side and then take your picture, because otherwise you're gonna stop in front of a local and that kind of upsets them, so just have a heads up for that one.
Another don't for while you're in the district is don't just stare at your phone. I think I've walked into like 15 people in the last like 100 yards because, I don't know, maybe there's a Pokemon catching thing going on, but whatever it is, people are walking into each other like mad. So look up from your phone, don't just stare at a screen. Another safety thing is if you're driving here and you have your own car or a rental, don't leave anything in your car. I mean, that's kind of just common sense, right? But just wanted to remind you of it. Okay, those were just two that I wanted to mention. We'll go back to Mark now.
Now, another don't I have for you has to do with the hotels when you do come here. Don't necessarily trust all the propaganda that tourist hotels give you, because one thing you'll see is someone will say, oh, we're a 10-minute walk from the mall, or we're only 15 minutes from the White House. And that's like somehow like in the movies where people can go from one side of the city to the other between a commercial break. Look, don't count on that. Look on the maps, because you are going to be doing a lot of walking when you are here, and there's just a lot of walking, a lot of stuff to do. So don't necessarily trust that the hotel's distance kind of thing. Also, don't forget to bring really good walking shoes when you're here, because you're going to be walking up and down the mall, seeing all these things, walking through all these Smithsonian museums and stuff like that. Your feet are going to start to hurt. So make sure you don't forget some good walking shoes. And when you're walking around, don't mess with the heat and humidity. I mean, DC gets very hot and very humid in the summer. I mean, June, July, August, man, it is not an enjoyable time to be here. Outside of that, it's great, but if you're going to be coming in the peak times when people have vacation times, make sure you're filling up on water. And yes, there are water fountains around the National Mall, you know, but you can get bottled water, fill up a water bottle before you go out. Stay hydrated, because it can be dangerous. And with that, make sure you have your sunblock. You know, don't forget the sunblock and some bug spray, because the bugs are out here and they will bite you. Poor Jocelyn's getting bitten up while she's filming this video for me, so do be careful with that. So when dealing with the metro, don't call it the subway, call it the metro. But when you have your ticket, your little card, don't throw that away, and don't put it away where it's tough to find, because you need that to ticket in. You're going to pass in, but also to get out of the metro, so have a heads up for that one. Another thing I'd say is we're here on the National Mall, and the thing is, you have what people say is the Smithsonian. Look, don't say you're going to the Smithsonian. The thing is, the Smithsonian is a collection of museums and the National Zoo. There's like 21 places you can go. So when you say you're going to the Smithsonian, it's like going to like a city, okay? So say, we're going to Air and Space, or we're going to American history, or we're going to natural history. Say that, and then people know where you're going to go, because there's more than just one Smithsonian museum when you're here. Another thing I want to say about the mall is don't forget to come back at night, okay? When it's evening time and the sun's gone down, when they light up the monuments, oh man, it is just gorgeous to walk around and take it in. The Korean Memorial, Lincoln Memorial, Washington Memorial. I mean, it's just really, the Washington Monument, I should say. It's really kind of cool to take in. So don't be like, oh, I don't want to go out at night. No, you can come down here and see these things in the evening, in dusk and dark when it's lit up, and it is really beautiful. Now, the thing is these Smithsonian museums, there's a cool don't with them is don't worry about paying. The Smithsonian museums are free, which is really cool. So definitely take advantage of that. But also, if you want to go to one of the more popular ones, you might can go online and sign up to get actually a convenience ticket. You pay like a small convenience fee of like $1 or $2 to actually get a ticket to get in some of the more popular museums, okay? So that can really be kind of a good thing as well. And if you look at some of the other don'ts, if you're going to be coming here, they have what's called 8th grade bus tour season, okay? That's when the 8th grade classes from around the U.S. come for their history vacation, their history tour with their classes here in D.C., and that's usually from mid-March through the beginning of June. So just know, you could get stuck behind a bunch of 8th graders going to every single museum and trying to go to a restaurant, stuff like that, and it can be a bit frustrating. So if you can come outside of the 8th grade season, do it. If not, well, don't be surprised if you got a few lines. So you don't have to trust me on some of these. I've actually brought in a local, Rob from Trip Hacks DC, probably the best channel for anybody coming to DC. Check him out. He's got great videos from everything from using the metro, the museums, all kinds of great stuff. And he has some don'ts as well. So you don't have to trust me. You can trust a local, okay? So, Rob, what are some of your 3 or 4 don'ts you want to tell people before they come here?
So the first one is don't stand on the left side of a metro escalator. I don't know if Mark already told you about that one, but just don't do it. If you're gonna ride metro, the rule is that when you're riding on an escalator, you walk on the left and you stand on the right. There is pretty much nothing that infuriates locals more than tourists who come to town and they haven't done their homework and they stand on the left side of an escalator.
See,
now,
I told you.
Because you're watching Wolters World and maybe you'll watch Trip Hacks DC, you won't have any trouble with this one.
Yeah, so what's another one?
Another one is don't forget that there are museums that are not located on the National Mall. A few of my favorites are the National Postal Museum, which is actually located near the Capitol and Union Station. And that's a museum that goes through the history of the U.S. Postal Service, which I know can sound a little dull, but I think it's actually really interesting. And if you're a stamp collector, they have one of the largest stamp collections, so it's really, really cool. Another one is the Portrait Gallery, which is located near the Capital One Arena, where there's basketball and hockey and concerts, and that is a museum of portraits. So if you're an art lover, then that is a really cool place to go. If you're interested in history through the lens of portraits, then that's a really cool place that you can go and check out.
So there's one don't I really wanted to talk about that I thought was the best one that really helped us with our visit here.
So when you do come to the National Mall and you go to the museums here, like the Natural History Museum or Air and Space, there's actually a second set of doors that a lot of people don't know about. So on the National Mall side, which are the doors that face the grassy area that we call the National Mall, is of course a set of doors you can go in. But on the other side, either Independence Avenue or Constitution Avenue, depending on which museum you're going to, is another set of doors. And those often have shorter lines because honestly, people just don't know that they're there.
And that's when we actually did. That was awesome. It cut out so much time because when we came out, we saw the line on the other side and we're like, thank you, Rob. You're the man.
And
so it was really cool.
And when you do come, you're going to have to go through a metal detector, have them search through your bag. So it actually does take quite a while to get into some of these museums. So having a shorter line can make a big difference.
Cool. Well, thanks, Rob.
Thank
and
you.
If you want to check him out, triphacksdc.com. He's also on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all over the place. Do check him out. He actually does tours, really cool tours like trivia tours and monument tours and all kinds of cool stuff. But we'll get back to our don'ts, but I want to say thanks to Rob because awesome dude.
Thanks, Mark.
No problem. So some other tips for when you're here on the National Mall. One thing is realize that these museums, they're all free. Like we said, But the thing is, don't try to do all the Smithsonian museums, because museum burnout is a really big thing when you do come here, because you think, oh, it's all free, I have to see everything. Look, if you're doing more than 2 Smithsonians a day, you're probably going to get a bit burned out, so just have a heads up for that one. Another thing, if you're going to the monuments, okay, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, the Korean War Memorial, the World War II Memorial, Lincoln Memorial, these kind of things, don't be disrespectful when you are there. Show respect for those soldiers that have fallen and the people that came back, and honor them. And the thing is we've seen a lot of the tour groups going through that have been a bit, you know, the I gotta gram this kind of thing in an inappropriate way. We had an honor flight when we were at the Korean War Memorial yesterday. It was a very moving thing, and people are trying to get their selfies, you know, stuff like this. I'm like, the dude was in the war and you're doing a selfie thing with him, so just try to have some respect when you are there. And though I don't want you to get the museum burnout, I am going to say this: don't sleep in when you're here. If you want to beat the crowds, get there early in the morning to be some of the first people in so you can beat the longer lines. Or look and see when they have the extended hours, like till 7:30 or midnight or late at night kind of stuff at some of the museums in the summer, and you can use that, because the thing is, a lot of tourists don't realize they have the late hours, and you can use that to your advantage. A couple more don'ts I have for you. One, don't think this is going to be a cheap visit, okay? I know that the museums and the Smithsonians are free, but when you're going to be staying here, eating out, man, that is not cheap to eat out here. The hotels, they're not cheap here, because a lot of people coming here, they're on vacation, so they're willing to spend more, or they're here for work, so work is comping these kind of things. So you do have that, so don't expect it to be a cheap visit. Also, if you're going to be coming here and you want to eat out at night, and there's lots and lots of great restaurants that are here, and you can eat really, really well here, don't forget to make reservations for the restaurants. You may think the reservations aren't needed. Oh, that's a big restaurant, it'll be no problem. Believe me, with all the tourists that come here in the evening time, you do need to make reservations, okay? So don't forget to do that. Otherwise, don't expect to eat into the fancy restaurants. You might be hitting a Five Guys, which isn't too bad, or a Jimmy John's or a Subway or something like that. So don't forget those reservations. And my last don't from here on the mall, we have a few more to give you though. My last don't from here on the mall is don't be afraid to take a bus tour around the city, because DC is huge, and to see all the stuff, you want to go to the Jefferson Memorial, and you want to see the National Mall, and you want to see some of the other stuff, and get out to Alexandria, you're probably going to need to do a bus tour when you are here, because I don't recommend driving around. Just take the metro or just take a bus tour, because they make it easy. You can get some good history stuff and get the free transport around town. So we'll finish this off outside of the beautiful DC area into Mount Vernon.
And lastly, don't just stay in the district. There's so much to see outside of just DC. We're here at George Washington's Mount Vernon. There's Monticello, Jefferson's home, that's maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours away from the city. There's so much more to see. There's Colonial Williamsburg, that's just a few hours. There's Busch Gardens. I mean, make this a really well-rounded trip. Don't just stay in the district. Get out there and see as much as you can.
Now, there are a lot of great restaurants here. Michelin star restaurants, award-winning restaurants, but there are also some international cuisines, some local foods, and some other things that you might want to try when you're in DC.
And Rob does a really great job of categorizing these into kind of 3 groups: the international food, the local food, and then the food that people
associate with DC, but you can kind of get it anywhere.
Yeah, and so I think the one that got us the most, the one that I've loved the most, is the international cuisine here, because there's people from all over the world live here in DC and eat here in DC, and they brought their food here. But the 2 biggest ones you really have to have, one is Ethiopian food. If you've never had Ethiopian food, I'm sorry, because it's amazing. And yes, it is one of the foods that you don't use a fork with. You actually tear this spongy bread. You might get the lamb stew, or you might get some of the veggie stuff, and you eat it up. We had it with the kids. They love it. And now anytime we go around the world and we see an Ethiopian restaurant, we eat there because of here in DC. The second international food, which is really here as well, which another place that we loved as a family when we visit that country, is Salvadorian food. Pupusas, they're not tacos, people. Salvadorian food is not Mexican food. It's so much more, a lot more fish. The pupusas, which is, you know, kind of like 2 tortillas with masa, and then there's stuff inside. It's so good. And that's another thing you can get when you're here. And there's tons of other international restaurants, but I think when people watch videos on what to eat in DC, they want to know more in your second group. What are those things that are truly DC originals?
Yeah, so the DC originals, as you could say, there's a few. The most popular one is the half smoke. And we don't really know how the half smoke got its name. There's a bunch of different theories, but it is basically a sausage on a bun. So it's better than a hot dog. It's a type of sausage. And the most famous half smoke is at Ben's Chili Bowl on U Street. And you can get your half smoke with chili on it, or if you're like me, you get it without chili on it. But that's a very DC food that you can get while you're here, is the half smoke. And the second one is wings with mumbo sauce. And if you haven't heard about mumbo sauce, don't worry, it's very specific to this area. It's also very hard to describe because every restaurant has their own recipe. So it's not like Heinz ketchup, where no matter where in the world you go, it always tastes the same. Every restaurant has its own recipe and is going to taste a little bit different. But the key is that if you want to have wings with mumbo sauce the authentic way, you've got to get it at a Chinese carryout restaurant. Sounds a little bit different, a little bit out there, but you go to a Chinese carryout restaurant, you get your wings with mumbo sauce, either with fried rice or French fries. And that's how you enjoy wings with mumbo sauce in DC.
That's awesome. But what about all these other things I see around that are supposed to be from DC, like was it the jumbo slice of pizza or something?
Jumbo slice pizza. This is one that I don't personally like. It is typically considered a bit of a drunk food, and that's why many of the jumbo slice restaurants are in areas with a lot of bars, and why they do most of their sales on Fridays and Saturdays after midnight. But if you are going to engage in that sort of thing, you might want to try out a jumbo slice piece of pizza while you're here. Another one is cupcakes. Cupcakes got huge. There used to be entire shows on the food cooking channels about cupcakes and the various cupcakeries across the country, and they got really big here in DC too, but really you can get cupcakes anywhere nowadays.
Yeah, and I think another one that's like a lot of times is actually seafood here, like the crab cakes and stuff. You have all kinds of seafood that you can get anywhere, but it's really good here.
So I consider crab to be the Maryland food.
Yeah.
And crab cakes and crab and oysters and Chesapeake Bay, things from the Chesapeake Bay, those are Maryland's, and we're not going to try to take them away from them, but we're next door neighbors to Maryland, so we have a lot of great Maryland food here in DC.
So those are some things you can eat when you're here, but there's also some advice we have for you when you do want to eat here in DC. One thing is take advantage of the happy hours to save money on the drinks, because it's expensive to eat here no matter when, so use those happy hours to help you out.
So my personal favorite types of restaurants are fast casual restaurants, and these are a step above fast food, but you're also not going to be sitting down and eating with a server serving you. But I really like some of them, like Kava for Mediterranean food, or Takorean for Korean and taco fusion, and there are so many of them here in DC, and that's one of the things I really love about DC, is that we have probably more fast casual style restaurants than anywhere else.
And that's going to help your budget too, quite a bit.
And you don't always have to eat at those fast casual restaurants. Washington, D.C. has a surprising number of award-winning restaurants, Michelin-starred restaurants. And sometimes, if you want to eat well, you just have to splurge. And guess what? It's worth the splurge.
Oh, yeah.
But if you're going to go to one of those award-winning restaurants, you've got to have a reservation. You can't walk up and expect to get in without one.
And the thing is, it's not really a ton of tourist traps here, are there?
No, I mean, we don't really have like the equivalent of Times Square or a big tourist trap like that here in DC.
Yeah, I mean, here it's more you're being trapped as a tourist or in a tourist situation. I think probably the biggest trapped as a tourist situation you're going to get into is if you kind of get stuck in a crowd going into an exhibit or going into a museum, because there's just so many people entering at one time. And so one thing that's really important is if you're coming to DC, make sure you plan out your day that you're starting early, okay? If you go early in the morning, like my mom and I went to the Daughters of American Revolution museums this morning. It opened at 8:30. There was nobody there. We got to enjoy ourselves there and got to work that way, because if you come in the afternoon,
it gets crowded, and you got to be expecting those crowds.
Yeah, so think about it that way, because you don't want to get stuck like that. Now, what's another thing they should look out for?
So it's not really a tourist trap, but you could get trapped if you sign up for a tour that doesn't actually have a human tour guide. And this is unfortunate because during COVID in 2020, 2021, a lot of tour companies had to close. And some of them, when they reopened, they were running buses and they were running transportation, but they didn't bring back their human tour guide. And so to me, a tour is a person like me, your tour guide, showing you around. And so when it's just a bus ride or just driving around looking at stuff, it's transportation. It's not a tour anymore.
And it's expensive transportation.
Expensive transportation, because you can ride the circulator bus for very cheap.
Yes, that is very true. I think so we're here near the National Mall, and I think another thing as a tourist trappy kind of thing is if you're going to be eating anywhere near the National Mall, it's not really a not a lot of good options around here, wouldn't you say?
When you're walking around the National Mall, you're not going to see restaurants on the side of the road. There are food trucks and there are some concession stands, but these are not places where you're going to sit down, or even places where you're going to, go up and get counter service or anything like that. So the restaurants, the places where you might want to eat, are going to be a little bit off of the National Mall when you're down here.
So do plan your day accordingly. So maybe have that big breakfast, then come in to enjoy here. You can grab some stuff. You can grab some stuff from the people, the trucks and stuff, but you're kind of trapped in that. So go and explore more and plan your meals around that. So I know I talked about getting stuck in that big group trying to get into a museum or within a museum, but also just the line going into the museum. In the pre-COVID days, there was a lot of times a second entrance, right?
Yeah, so in the before times, many of the museums had two sets of doors. One would be on the side facing the National Mall, the big grassy area, and then the other would be on Independence Avenue or Constitution Avenue, depending on which side of the National Mall you were on. And a lot of times, because the school groups would go in on the National Mall side, if you went around to the other side of the building, you could skip that line.
That was my favorite tip he gave me when we came here a few years ago, because it saved so many headaches. And hopefully, when they get enough people working again, they'll open up those secondary entrances. Now, the thing is when you go traveling, any big city, all big cities have, not necessarily tourist traps, there's scams you got to look out for. Just like anywhere, you're not going to be making change for anybody, okay? There's banks that do that. You don't give your phone to anyone. They may say, I need to make a phone call. Guess what? You can find other phones, okay? They don't need to use your phones. Stay away from anything like that. The typical tourist scams, they're here too. It's not like we're away from that just because we're in the capital.
Yeah, we're lucky that we don't have as many as other big world cities, but if anybody asks you to make change, you don't owe anyone change. If anyone tries to hand you something on the street, or especially if they try to hand your kids some junk on the street, don't take it, because they're just going to want you to give them something in return.
Yeah. So another kind of being trapped as a tourist thing, it's also sometimes your mentality, because when you think about coming to D.C. or the district, you think about, I want to be by the mall, I want to see by the White House, and I want to see the Washington Monument, Lincoln Memorial. And the thing is, you trap yourself in staying by the National Mall, and I think that's something you want to have different options for, wouldn't you say?
Well, I think it's great if you want to stay near the National Mall. Staying near the White House is actually one of my top recommendations, but I know that that's not for everybody, and if you don't want to stay right next to the White House or right next to the National Mall, there are lots of other options. I actually have 11 areas of the city that I recommend, and so you can check that out over at tripxdc.com/hotels, and hopefully one of those 11 areas will suit your needs.
Exactly. Now, another thing that's really cool is when you come here to DC, there's so much free stuff. There's more free galleries and museums and exhibits and all kinds of things that you sometimes get sucked into. I'm only going to do free stuff. And I think that's a tourist mistake they make, is you got to realize sometimes you got to kind of a balance, right? It's free, but then there's some stuff that's worth paying for. Like my mother and I, we just went to the International Spy Museum. It wasn't free, but it was worth every penny. And so when you're planning out your time here and your budget here, make sure you kind of balance do I pay versus free and what you really want to see.
And I love free. I think some of the best things in the city are free, but sometimes there are things that are worth the splurge, and whether that's a fancy restaurant, a chef's tasting menu, or having a tour guide show you around the sites, which are already free, and you don't have to do it. There's no rule that says you have to, but plenty of people have found that it's a great experience that is worth it.
Yeah. My tummy's rumbling. So any tourist things I need to think about?
So when it comes to restaurants are hard. They're really hard. And I say that because you've really got to keep up with the restaurant scene. Yeah. And this is one of the things that's really tricky is the last time you came to DC, we were just talking about, was 3 years ago. And you might have eaten at some great restaurants 3 years ago, and the restaurant might have closed, or it might have lost its luster, or the chef might have moved on to a new project. And so if you return to that same restaurant, you might not get the same great experience. You want to move on to the next great experience. And so keep up with the local food scene from people who actually live here and write about it and study it.
Yeah, because your guidebook that was written 4 years ago, that was published 2 years ago, probably not going to be as helpful as someone like Rob or some of the other locals you'll talk to. Now, another thing I think is in terms of a tourist trap, this is one that I've had both times I've come here in the last few years with you and my mom, my family, and even when I was a kid and we used to come here, is you get trapped in thinking, I've got to do everything, right? I'm sure you have that sometimes with some of your tour groups, right?
One of the hardest things to tell someone is that when they're coming to DC and they're only here for a few days, they can't do everything. You just can't. You just can't do it. And you need at least a week to do most of the big things, let alone the hidden gems and some of the smaller things.
And then, God forbid you want to do a day trip.
A day trip. Yeah, you got to be here for enough days to make a day trip worthwhile. And then, of course, there's the season. Some things are seasonal. And so even if you come in the summer, you might not do the winter stuff. And if you come in the winter, you might not do the summer stuff. So you're probably going to have to make more than one trip to DC.
There's a lot of weird things that might shock you when you're here, but one thing that shocks you the most is, oh my God, is everything free here? Well, no, not everything's free, and I'll talk about that later, but the number of free museums, galleries, institutions, shows, tours that you can go on when you're here, it's amazing how much free stuff there is. And yes, there are the Smithsonian museums. Remember, the Smithsonian is a collection of museums and galleries. So you've got a lot of them, from the Air and Space Museum to the Museum of the American Indian. There's so many Smithsonian museums you can visit. Then they're all free, which is awesome. But there's also the National Zoo you can go to. You can go to the Holocaust Museum, which is a very moving experience. Heck, you can go here, right behind me. No, that's not the White House. That's the Daughters of American Revolution. You can go see their museum where different states actually decorate a room in a period piece so you can see what it was like to have a parlor in the 1860s or a library in the 1920s. There's so much free stuff you could do here that it's awesome, and it's shocking how many things there are that are free. But that leads into the second thing that's very shocking when you come here, is how expensive everything is that isn't free. Look, with all those free museums and all the Smithsonians and all the wonderful monuments you can go to and see and walk in the National Mall, just take it all in. When you're not doing the free stuff, oh my God, it is expensive. If you're looking at accommodation, if you're looking at food, if you're looking at museums that you have to pay for, International Spy Museum, very, very cool, but it's over $25 per person. And those things can add up really quickly. Like, I worry about the people that live here. I don't know how they pay for it, because I can't imagine what the living costs are here. But as a tourist, you're going to be like, oh my God, if it's not free, it's insane expensive. So be aware of that, okay? Now, the third thing that shocks tourists when they come here is really the feeling of how far everything is between everything. Because when you look on the map, it's like, oh, there's the Washington Monument. It's right next to the Lincoln Memorial, which is right next to the White House, right next to the Capitol. Oh, we can walk there. Wow, Georgetown isn't that far away. We can walk down there. It all looks so close. But that's because this city is so grandiose and it's laid out. And you have these big, grandiose buildings with big, grandiose spaces and big, grandiose spaces between them. Man, it can be a lot. So don't forget to bring some good walking shoes when you're here, because my God, it is a lot of walking and a lot of distances between things that you don't realize, okay? So use the metro. All right, that's going to make your life a lot easier to get between places, and their metro is super awesome. You'll be surprised how clean it is too and how effective it is, okay? But I think the true shock that you'll get with the metro when you're here are the death stares you get if you stand on the left side of the escalator when you come here. Now, in all of my DC videos, I talk about standing on the right when you are on the escalator for the metro, not the left, because that's where people pass. But honestly, you'll be shocked. Like, people tell you, move. They're like, get out of the way. I got stuff to do. I got to go to work. Or they'll just give you the death stare saying, I want you to die because you're holding me up. Okay, so that might shock you a bit too about the metro. So if you've gotten this far, you've had my ideas of what shocked me as a tourist here in DC. Well, know what you need to do? When you finish this video, go over and watch Rob at Trip Hacks DC and have him go through 10 things that shock tourists that he sees when they come here, because he's probably the awesomest guide you can have here in DC.
And let's continue on with Mark Shocks.
Yep. Now, the next thing that might shock you when you're here that might not notice since I'm filming here in the winter is I'm melting. Melting. Oh my goodness. If you come here in the summer, it is hot, it is humid, it is horrible. So make sure the hotel you go to has AC and maybe bring an extra fan for yourself, because in the summertime, it can be really miserable here when you're a tourist. And with all the tourists that are here as well, so it's hot, humid, and you're all smushed up together, not a fun time. So just be ready for that. That's why come at some of the other times, not in the summer, so you don't get overrun by all the families that are here or the 8th grade tour groups that come. So just have a heads up. Now, another thing I think surprises a lot of people is how dead it is by the National Mall. Now, the National Mall is where you have the Washington Memorial, you have the Lincoln Memorial, you have the Congress, you have the World War II Memorial is beautiful. The Korean Monument, oh my goodness, the Vietnam Memorial. I mean, they're just gorgeous. But when you're down here at the mall, especially in the evening time, it's dead, like totally dead. Like, this is really weird. Why is no one here? Because these are all government buildings and offices down by the mall, and so therefore nobody's here at night, and therefore there's not a lot of restaurants. There's not a lot of good restaurants in general down here even during the day. I mean, honestly, you should go to some of the cafes at some of the Smithsonian's. The Museum of American Indian has a really good cafe. You can eat there, but there's not a lot of place to eat down by the National Mall, and it's really kind of dead here, and you're kind of surprised, like, why aren't there more people around? Yeah, when there's events going on, it's packed, but otherwise, you might want to look at staying not by the National Mall, but out in different parts of the city. And when you go around the city, another thing that might surprise you or shock you when you are here is the amount of homelessness and poverty you will see in the district. I mean, it's really sad to see this great country we have, and it's just a beautiful place, but you see so many people that are suffering here in the capital, and it's one of those things you'll notice, whether it's a tent city outside of Union Station, or people wandering the streets, or people, going into stores and wandering around. It just breaks your heart. It surprises you that we don't have more here. Oh, looks like Air Force One's taking off. Here. See? There you go. That was pretty cool. Now, something in relation to the people and kind of the service when you are here in DC, one thing I will say is you'll kind of be surprised that it's not that you don't find nice people here in DC. Like, we have a number of friends from the DC area that we really love and show us a good time when we come here. But in general, this is not a friendly city. You're not going to get, the service with a smile. You're not going to get the locals say, oh, you should go do this. Here, go check this out instead. You don't have that here. People are a bit more guarded, or they're particular with the people they'll talk to. So do be ready for that. So your over-friendliness, if you're coming from, like myself, from the Midwest, it won't be much appreciated when you are here. Now, something I think might shock people, especially if they're tourists that haven't come to DC since the 80s, 90s, or early 2000s, is how much DC changes. I mean, the restaurant scene, the bar scene, the club scene, even the museum scene and the gallery scene really changes a lot. And I know a lot of people, talking to my mom and other people, they're like, oh, well, you just go to Georgetown. Oh, no. If you look at a map of DC and you look for Michelin stars, you're not seeing much in Georgetown. So go out and explore some of the other different parts of the city. Yeah, Capitol Hill's really cool. Ivy City, which used to be an industrial wasteland, now has some really cool stuff to go eat when you are there. You can go to Cleveland Park, you can go to Brooklyn. I mean, there's so many different neighborhoods around for you to enjoy that it's not the good old days of the 80s and 90s where it's just, we go to Georgetown and that's it. Now, Georgetown, you don't even need to, it's cool to see the buildings, but go explore more places, all right? And then I think the last thing I want to mention about things that'll surprise you when you come to DC are all of the amazing day trips you can take from DC. I mean, it's not just coming to see the monuments and the museums, but go out and explore things that are nearby. Within a couple hours, you have tons of really great things to do. That's why people use this whole area as a really good family vacation destination, because yes, you've got DC, or you can head down to Alexandria, Virginia, or go over to Annapolis in Maryland. Heck, you can go to Harper's Ferry in West Virginia and see history and gorgeous nature when you're there. DC has got a ton of international restaurants that are fantastic, but for me, the best one and the first thing you need to have when you come here is Ethiopian food. There's a lot of Ethiopian places around town. Make sure you check them out, and what's cool about it is there's no forks, there's no knives, there's no spoons, none of that stuff. You take the bread, you use your hands and dig in there and eat. It's fantastic with the meats and the veggies and the stews and the sauces. It is awesome. That's my first thing I have to eat when I come here. Second thing you want to have when you come here is Maryland crab cakes and Maryland crab. Yes, I know we're not in Maryland, we're in the District of Columbia, but honestly, around here, there's so much great crab that you can have. Make sure you grab some if it is a crab cake or just crabs in general. It is so good. The third thing you need to have when you come here, because we're going to stay in that Chesapeake Bay theme of in terms of seafood are the oysters. And what's cool about oysters when you're here is you're going to find a lot of places that have oysters at happy hour, like dollar oysters or something like that, or half price oysters at a happy hour, and that could be all over town. So definitely check out some places for that, because yes, it's a good little thing for your lunch budget and for your tummy budget when you get those deals. But even in general, the oysters are fantastic. And the thing is, when you do come to DC, there's some things you should know. One thing is, if you're on the National Mall and you're going to all those different Smithsonian museums, there's not really any restaurants there. I mean, there's the pavilion and stuff like that, but it's mostly going to be food trucks when you are there, and that's okay because there's a lot of good food trucks around town, so you can do that. But on the mall, you're going to have to walk up a little bit just to get the food trucks and stuff, so you can have that. Also, when you are wanting to go out for dinner, make sure you make reservations for your dinner, okay? Because there's so many people that are going out and enjoying the fantastic restaurants around town that it does book up and it does get full. And you may think, oh, that restaurant's plenty big, they'll have plenty of space for us. No, they might not. So make sure you do make dinner reservations, because we've made that mistake ourselves, okay? So the fourth thing you need to have when you come here is a half smoke. And a half smoke is basically, it's a hot dog, it's a sausage that's half pork, half beef. And the best place to get it is Ben's Chili Bowl right behind there. They cut it in half. Yes, you get chili on it, things like that. But you'll see the half smokes around town. It just means you're getting a big old fat sausage, but it is a good thing to, like, when you're on the go and want to grab something, they are good, so you do have that. And the fifth thing you need to have when you're here, I'm going to tie together some like local specialties, some local treats. One thing is you got hot wings with mumbo sauce. It's like, I don't know, it's like a sweet and sour Chinese sauce and barbecue sauce had a baby, and then they put that on the wings. You'll have that some places. It's not everywhere, but if you can find it, it's worth it. Sometimes you'll see it like bright orange on your wings. You're like, what the heck? But it is worth it. Another thing is, yes, if you go to Georgetown, you can get their cupcakes that are there. I know it's a bit overrated now, but those are nice. But for me, is when we went to, my favorite of the specialties around here is when we went to Mount Vernon, you know, George Washington's Mount Vernon, and we had the peanut soup. That was really good. It was like liquid peanut butter. It was fantastic. And their bread pudding. It was so good. And the first and the biggest one that you're probably going to do when you're here and you don't even realize it is standing on the left on the escalator to the metro. Look, the people here, they got work to do. They got things to do. They're not trying to see museums. They're trying to get to work and go see their friends and go out to some of the great restaurants here. And you standing on the left on the escalator is really going to upset them. So when you get those death stares, when you're on the, on the escalator, it's not just a death stare. They want you to die a horrible, horrible, horrible death because you held them up, okay? So remember, stand on the right on the escalator when it comes to the metro. Second thing that's going to upset them when you come here is if you joke about DC not being a state, or at least not being sympathetic to their discussion about DC becoming a state. Because remember, the US is formed for taxation without representation. Well, here in DC, they don't have any actually voting members of Congress from here. And they have more population here in DC than you do in Vermont or Wyoming. So that is kind of an upsetting thing to them. So at least listen to them and talk to them, and don't just throw it out of hand, because it is kind of important to the locals here, okay? I mean, think about it. They're in such a position that their city government has to get stuff okayed by Congress. And I'll be honest with you, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, nobody wants that for their city government, okay? Now, the third thing you can do that will really piss off the locals when you're here is just assume everybody's a Fed, or everybody works in politics here in DC. Look, DC is full of all kinds of people, from teachers to cooks to lawyers to doctors to analysts to all kinds of people that aren't in politics, and they don't really want to talk about politics. So if you come here thinking everybody's a politician or wants to be a political hack, it's not going to go over well. Kind of avoid the politics talk when you are here, because they have so many other great things to enjoy here that politics isn't one of the things they want to talk about. And speaking of great things to do when you're here, the fourth thing that will piss off the locals, or at least upset them or annoy them when you come here, is if you're going to meet a local friend and you tell them, hey, let's meet at the Smithsonian. My friends, the Smithsonian is actually like 19 galleries and museums combined, so it's not really helpful. So what you want to do is make sure you give them a specific Smithsonian museum. Oh, let's meet at Air and Space. Let's meet at the Castle. That's going to be a lot more helpful, instead of them going, oh man, Smithsonian, come on guys. Because honestly, the locals, they don't just sit around on the National Mall and chill out, at Lincoln Memorial all the time. They go all over the city, okay? So just have a heads up for these four things you might do that might piss off a local here in DC. It does not always mean a cheap vacation when you come to the nation's capital. Wouldn't you agree?
It's a high-cost city. I'm not going to lie about that.
So what we're here today is going to go through accommodation tips, tour tips, sightseeing tips, food tips, stuff that's going to help you save some money when you do come here, because you don't have to break the bank. It's very easy to break your bank here, but there's some things we need to do. And I think we need to start off by talking about accommodation.
When you come really matters. If you're coming here when not a lot of people are around, you're going to get a good deal. If you're coming at a time when a lot of people are around, you're going to pay a premium.
Yeah, I mean, we're here in January, and we were here a few years ago in July, and I literally paid 1/3 of the price for my hotel room, same hotel, that I did 3 years ago, because we're coming in off season. That's a big thing. So one thing that can help you when you're looking for accommodation, no matter what time of the year you're coming, is really research different hotels and don't be kind of stuck thinking one hotel is always more expensive, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, a lot of it depends on events. If there's events happening, conferences, conventions, basketball tournaments, other things, a hotel might be completely booked because it is the official hotel of that event. And if you try to book there, it's going to be really expensive. So sometimes if you look nearby, look around, you can find other hotels that have a lot more availability. And with more availability comes a little bit better rates.
And then you can actually sometimes get a much nicer hotel for a more affordable price. And you're like, how is this possible? But that's why it's important to check around. Now, second thing we need to talk about is food, because for as many free things as we'll talk about later there is, when it comes to food, there's not a lot of cheap options. And so, Rob, help me. Help me figure out how I can keep my manly figure when I'm here on a budget.
Yeah, there's a lot of free activities, a lot of free museums in DC, but you're not going to eat for free. You've got to pay when you come. And so my favorite restaurants are what we call fast casual restaurants. And so these are places that are better than fast food. These are above McDonald's or Taco Bell quality, right? But they're not sit down, have a server come serve you, bring your drinks, all that stuff. And so, most people probably know about Chipotle, for example. That's a fast casual restaurant. But I also like places like Taquerian and Cava. Those are some places that are similar concept, but much more affordable than your sit-down restaurant.
Yeah, and I think another thing is important is when you're looking at going out to eat, sometimes the time of the day can make a big difference. I know one of the things you hooked me up with last time I was here were the happy hours, right?
Yeah, happy hours are much more affordable if you're going to be drinking, if you want to order beers and wines. You can get drinks at a happy hour sometimes for half the price that you would get them if you ordered them during dinner. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Beers, wines, and especially cocktails during dinner are not cheap, and you're not going to find deals on that. If you want the deals, you can go to happy hour, which are typically, before 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, depending on which place you're going to, and that's where you're going to find the deals.
And I think another thing, and you'll notice this when you're here, is if you're looking to cut costs when it comes to food, a lot of times it's breakfast is the easiest one to cut out.
Yeah, I don't really even eat breakfast. I'm going to be honest about that. I always drink a cup of coffee.
You can tell, breakfast, no breakfast.
Yeah, I always get a cup of coffee, and I might get a granola bar or something simple. And that's one thing you can do to save some money is if you're not a breakfast person, you could go to Starbucks and you could get a regular black coffee and you could get a little pastry or something there, or if it's not Starbucks, a local coffee shop, and just get a little pastry, and that's your breakfast. And that's going to be a lot less expensive than going to a restaurant. And also, we just don't really have a lot of breakfast restaurants, right?
Now, brunch on the weekends, you can find places, right?
You can get brunch anywhere. Every place any restaurant that's open is going to serve brunch on the weekends. But it's not like we have a lot of diners, for example. Greasy Spoons, that's kind of a relic of the past. We don't really have a lot of breakfast restaurants anymore. So I like to cheap out on breakfast because it's the easiest one too.
And the thing is cheaping out on breakfast gets me thinking about there's stuff you can cheap out on, but also I think it's important that you kind of pick and choose a lot of things, whether it's food or tours or museums. And like with restaurants for us, like my mom and I, we ate at a wonderful French restaurant last night. But for lunch today, we went to food courts and did that. And I think overall, it's important to kind of think about picking and choosing when you should spend or don't spend it. I mean, Rob's a tour guide. And there's one thing I recommend spending money on is actually getting a tour guide. I mean, I'll let you talk about this. This is your area, but...
Yeah, you can wander around and you can look at the sites. You can look at the Capitol from the outside and the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial down on the other side of the park. And that's all completely free. And many people do that, and that's perfectly fine. But you could also sign up for a guided tour. And many people who come to DC say that that's often their most memorable experience. And when I travel, I'm not just saying this because I'm a tour guide, whenever I travel, I always sign up for tours, multiple tours usually during a trip.
And if you're looking at food, the food tours, those can be fun too, right?
Oh, that's something I always do. When I'm in a new city, a city that I'm going to for the first time, I always sign up for a food tour because that gives you a chance to taste all the local foods, the signature foods of that city. And it usually replaces at least one meal, if not a meal and a half. And so it can actually save you a little bit of money because you don't have to get dinner that day you're going on the food tour. The food tour is your dinner.
Exactly. That's a wonderful recommendation. And you know, the tours take you around, but they're also, we have to look at transport, because the cheapest transportation that you're going to have in DC are
your own 2 feet.
That's right. Because this is a city of walking. My mom and I have been putting on about 9 miles a day walking around. And it's not like we haven't seen stuff, because you're going from place to place to place to place to place to place to place. And then in the museums, it's walking. So you need good shoes, but you don't have to like Uber everywhere. You don't have to taxi everywhere. You can, but your 2 feet are the best things to have. Now, other helpful budget options for transportation, if you don't want to do the walking, are
the circulator bus. At the time we're recording this, $1, the cheapest transportation in town, circulator bus. I know a lot of people who come to DC, they love the circulator bus because it's cheap and it's convenient and it gets you to places where you want to go. But you could also do the metro if you needed to get a little bit farther away.
Yep. So then we have our fifth topic, and that are the sites and the free sites to see. And here's the thing, there's tons of fantastic free sites to see here. And you know how you're going to learn about them? You're going to go click on that button over there, and you're going to go watch Rob's video on 10 free places to see here in DC, because the dude knows what he's talking about. Fantastic guy. Please tell him, Rob, tell him where to find you.
Trip Hacks DC here on YouTube, triphacksdc.com in your web browser. And I'm sure Mark will be generous enough to put a link to all of those things in the video description.
And I think probably the biggest one for people to go to is going to Mount Vernon. George Washington's estate, Mount Vernon. It is incredible with the history they have there, the pieces that they have in the building, but also you learn about George Washington, the man, the person. You learn about his enslaved people and how their lives were. It's a great educational experience. And you have a great view of the river right behind his estate, which makes it a really relaxing place to go. And honestly, if you got your car, 30 to 40 minutes without traffic, you can be there. And right next to Mount Vernon, another place you can go to is Alexandria, Virginia. This is those really cute, quaint coastal towns, because Alexandria was an old port, okay, during the Revolutionary War. And before then, I mean, it's been a port city for a long time. So it has these cute cobblestone streets and all these cute buildings. And yes, you can go see the Spite House, which is like the skinniest house in the U.S. You can go to the torpedo factory, and no, it's not a torpedo factory. It's actually an art center now. So you can see the artists actually making the art and displaying their art. And when you go around, there's tons of little cute restaurants and beautiful homes you can go visit, which is really nice. But we've got a video on Alexandria. You can watch that for more tips. And what's cool is Alexandria is actually really close. It's on the metro line, okay? So you can actually take the metro from the center and go out there. It's really, really cool. Now, next up, you're going to need a car to get out to there. And that is actually going to Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. Yes, you can get to West Virginia from here. Hour and a half, hour and 15 minutes, maybe more, maybe less, depending on traffic and when you're going. But honestly, Harper's Ferry is gorgeous. Just West Virginia in general is gorgeous. We have two rivers coming together with the mountains and the hiking you can do there, and just walking around the historic town. It is fantastic. And you have the Harper's Ferry National Historic Park you can visit as well. Now, another day trip that a lot of people don't realize is actually can be a day trip from here is going to Baltimore. Honestly, people from DC like to go to Baltimore because they can eat and drink and have a good time a lot cheaper than here in DC. But if you go there, the Baltimore Museum of Art is worth going to see. You got Fort McHenry you can check out when you're there. You can see the Wolters Museum of Art. No relation, they spell the name wrong. It's W-A there. You've got a railroad museum. You have a lot of things you can do in here. The Inner Harbor you can go check out, which is really nice. You can go to Walkfell's Point Historic District. There's a lot of things you can do in Baltimore. And again, it's a lot cheaper to go out and enjoy yourself when you're in Baltimore than it is in DC. And Baltimore is like, 40 minutes to an hour drive north of DC. There's an Amtrak train that goes up there. There's plenty of options to get to Baltimore, so that could be a good day trip for you as well. Now, another place in Maryland you can go to is actually Annapolis, Maryland, the capital of Maryland. Yeah, that's just east of here. It's a historic city, so you have the historic parts to see. You have the State House you can go to. You have the waterfront you can enjoy, the Naval Academy, and there's a lot of things you can do, which is right nearby. Now, if you're looking to drive a little bit farther and get more of American history, in about an hour and a half, you can get to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, where the Battle of Gettysburg happened. And so you can go through that historic park there and the historic battlefield. It is done up very well, lots of explaining, and you can drive through and check out a lot of the stuff. If you can do a tour there, it's really worthwhile. So that's something you can do. But it is an hour and a half drive from here, so maybe you want to sign up for a tour that will take you for a day. And then I have another one, which some people consider a day trip from here, which is not a day trip. You need to spend a night there because it's a little bit farther. It's about 2.5 hours away, and that's historic Williamsburg. Historic Williamsburg, for me, is a place when I was a kid, we would come here and then we'd go to Williamsburg and enjoy them, showing us how the Smiths work and how did everybody live back in the day during the Revolution and then the historic buildings that are there. And it's actually a really fun place to go to learn about living history. So it's worth going to see. But I know for kids, it might get a little bit boring. So when you're there, you can also hit up Busch Gardens and enjoy the roller coasters as well. But at 2.5 hours of a drive away, maybe it's not exactly the best day trip to go on. And there are other places you can go see in Virginia and Maryland that are close by. And today we have a few don'ts about coming here to Alexandria. And I gotta tell you, if you're gonna be in DC, don't skip out on coming to Alexandria for a day trip or even half a day trip, because you can see some museums in the morning and then come here to Alexandria in the afternoon and see some of the historic homes that are here. I'll talk about those later, but just to explore this area and eat really well when you're here and have dinner here as well. So don't pass up coming here when you are here. Now, one important don't we have when you do come here to Alexandria is don't think that the torpedo factory has really anything to do with military anything. Yes, there is a torpedo in there, but actually it's an art center and you can go see artist studios and you can see their works. It's actually 3 floors of artists you can visit when you're there. So it's kind of a cool thing to do. So don't think it's military. Know that it's art when you're there. Another don't for Alexandria is don't forget the water. You can actually do sightseeing trips on the river, which is really, really pretty. Or if you want, you can take the water taxi into DC, so you have water options as well. And so you can go and explore the beauty that's here. And yes, don't forget the waterfront, the riverfront. You can go and explore. There's restaurants. You actually have, like I said, the torpedo factory right behind me. You can come out from the artists there, but don't forget the water when you're here. Another don't I have for you here in Alexandria, if you're going to be here, don't forget some good shoes because the sidewalks are brick. So therefore they can be a little uneven. So you're going to want to walk around seeing all these pretty houses and historic homes and all the churches and sites and restaurants. Don't forget some good walking shoes and don't forget to watch your step. Now behind me you see the skinniest house in the US, or at least one of the skinniest houses in the US. It's only 7 feet wide. And my don't for that is it shows up in every single guidebook and every single blog and every single everything about Alexandria, but don't get overhyped. It's just a house that's 7 feet wide that has a really cool story. Go and explore some of the other homes, but I want to talk about that in the next don't. Another don't here in Alexandria is don't forget all the historic homes that are here. Yes, you have the Carlisle house you can visit, the Lee Fendel home you can go see, and they have period pieces in the homes. So you get a better feel of history here in the city, and there's a number of homes you can visit. Also, there's a number of museums you can visit. Probably the one that's more interesting or fun to check out is probably the Apothecary Museum. You can see that. Or if you want to kind of throw one back where good old George Washington and some other presidents did, you go to Gadsby's Tavern Museum, or just go to Gadsby Tavern and have a drink and see the museum, how they restored it as well. So there's a lot of historic stuff you can see while you're here and not just walking around to find places to eat and drink and enjoy yourself. You see that trolley going by? One thing that's really cool about coming to Alexandria is you don't have to worry about transportation because honestly, this is a super easy day trip from DC. You have the George Washington Parkway you can drive in on. You can take an Uber. I mean, we took an Uber in and it was 15 minutes from the Capitol building to dropping us off at the torpedo factory. It is so easy, but you'll notice, you see, there's another one of those trolleys going by. There's actually a metro stop here. You can go to King Street, Old Town, and stop there, and that trolley goes back and forth up King Street. That's the main street, which I'll talk about, and it's free, and it goes in. It's so simple to get here. If you want something else, well, guess what? You can take a water taxi sometimes. There's all kinds of easy ways to get here, so that's why this makes a really great, easy day trip from DC. So don't worry about getting here. It's pretty simple, but there is one part about driving here you might want to know about. Another don't I have for you when you come to Alexandria is don't just think you can park anywhere on the streets, okay? You might have to have a permit to park on the streets, so make sure you're looking for parking spots and parking lots you can stay in. Well, make sure it's okay for you to park because they got some rules on when you can't park and who can and cannot park in certain spots. So have a heads up for that because you don't want to end up, without your rental car if you're here. Another thing I got to tell you is don't be surprised if you spend a lot of time walking up and down King Street because it's not just the historic part by the riverfront. It actually goes all the way to the metro stop and you can walk that entire way. Yeah, the trolley can take you too, but there's all the shops, the restaurants, and there's a variety of restaurants in terms of price and what you can have. So you have a great variety of things you can do on King Street, but just know you're going to be walking up and down it quite a bit. Another note is don't forget about the parks that are around the town. There's a few that are actually on the river, like Riverfront Park. You can enjoy there, and there's some in town to help you relax. But I think the most important park around here is actually the Great Waves Water Park you can do in the summer to kind of cool off from the heat of the city. Another don't I have for you, if you're going to be flying in and you're going to be staying in DC, but you want to stay in the Alexandria area, don't forget to try to get a flight in and out of Reagan National Airport, because it's literally just down the street from Alexandria. So it makes it a lot easier than Dulles or Baltimore or other places you might want to fly into. So have a heads up when you're choosing your tickets. So my last don't for coming here to Alexandria is don't forget about Mount Vernon. Yes, George Washington's estate, Mount Vernon, is actually right by here. So if you're coming here, it's a nice, easy, extra little bit to get down to Mount Vernon and see his estate, see his home, the beautiful views of the river, and see how his enslaved people lived and how he treated everyone. It's a really incredible experience to go there, and it's right here. The Mount Vernon Trail is here, so you can go down there. So if you want to drive, or if you want to ride, or you want to hike, if you're crazy and healthy and want to run, I guess you could do that too. But Mount Vernon is one of those things you really should do when you do come here to Alexandria. Even if you're just going down to Mount Vernon to see it, stop here in Alexandria, because it is a nice day trip, even half-day trip to enjoy from DC. We're here in Alexandria, Virginia, enjoying some fantastic food while we're here, and we want to make sure you get some tasty treats when you're here in Virginia. And I think the first thing we need to talk about when you come to Virginia that you should have are peanuts. Yes, peanuts. Simple, fantastic peanuts, and all the different things you can flavor peanuts with, but probably my favorite thing, and one you should have actually if you go to Mount Vernon, or even here in Alexandria, you can have peanut soup. Yes, a creamy peanut soup is fantastic. So you definitely want to have that. Now, another thing you want to have when you come to Virginia is Brunswick stew. Now, I know when you think of Brunswick stew, you're like, wait, isn't that a Georgia thing? Yes, it can be a Georgia thing, and there's actually kind of a little disagreement on who really owns Brunswick stew. But let's put it this way. No matter if you're in Georgia or Virginia, you're going to love Brunswick stew. If you're not sure what it is, think of it like smoked chicken, smoked pork, but like almost like a smoked barbecue soup with a tomato base. It's fantastic. And here you might actually get some rabbit in there, and that's another thing you might see on some menus here in Virginia is rabbit. And if you get a chance, have some. I had a rabbit pie the other day. So good. Now, with all the coast that Virginia has, the Chesapeake Bay, and all this fantastic water you can enjoy, whether it's rivers, lakes, the coast, there's fantastic seafood you can have here. And I guess water food, because not all seafood when you are here, but for me, the best kind of seafood things to have, one, oysters. Oh my God, the oysters here are great. Even on the half shell, or maybe have baked oysters, you can't go wrong with that. Also, what you're gonna see is actually crab, blue crab or she crab, or if you could just have the blue crab and you can eat it like literally straight, like with the shell, have that, or just have she crab soup. So good, but the crab here is amazing. So yes, I know Maryland is like literally across the water there, and you can have the crab cakes from Maryland, but you can have them here too in Virginia. It's amazing. But the thing is, Virginia isn't just coastline. I mean, yes, you can have great, and by the way, you can have great all kinds of seafood. But if you go inland and throughout the state, there's one thing that varies throughout the state that you should have, and that's barbecue. You know, Virginia is part of the South, right? And so barbecue is a staple of Southern food. And here in Virginia, you have different styles of barbecue depending where you're gonna go. So try different barbecue when you're throughout the state. And of course, you can have those fantastic Southern victuals out there, your pimento cheese and your, oh my God. I just had fried crab deviled eggs. They were deviled eggs with crab meat fried. Oh my God, it was so good. But you can have all those wonderful things when you're here. Now, another thing you might not realize is actually from here in Virginia is, well, Virginia ham. So I guess you do know Smithfield and the Virginia ham, but country ham. You want to have country ham when you're here. It's sliced really, really thin, and it's just so good. And if you can get a country ham biscuit, oh, you definitely have to do it. And if you can't get a country ham biscuit when you're here, get some biscuit and get some biscuits and get some apple butter. That's another great thing when you're here. And if you haven't had apple butter, it's not like butter. It's like an apple jam kind of thing, but a little bit different. And of course, there's desserts. I mean, we hear the legend of George Washington chopping down the cherry tree and admitting that he cut it down. Well, you know what? We all should have been mad because that means there were less cherries to put in those cherry pies. Look, Virginia, they do really good pies, whether it's cherry pie, apple pie, any kind of pie, you should have it. And if you're going around and you see fried pies, which are basically like apple turnovers or whatever fruit turnovers where they fry it up, is so good. Get those, okay? And then, of course, you might be thirsty when you are here in Virginia, and like I said, it's a Southern staple, and it's going to be in all of our videos about the South. Sweet tea, not unsweet tea. Now, you can get unsweet tea, that happens, especially if you're by DC. There's all kinds of people from unsweet tea states. Ugh. But honestly, sweet tea is a thing here in Virginia. You can have that. But also another thing you can drink if you're looking for something to enjoy that's regional is actually Virginia wines. Yes, there are vineyards you can go to here in Virginia and enjoy, but also when you go to the wine store, you can get some Virginia wines to take home and enjoy, okay? So, and the thing is he's also a private tour guide. And so we're going to talk about today are kind of reasons why it's a good idea to hire a private guide. Now, I know sometimes you don't need to take one. You might know the city well enough and you don't want to deal with it and things like that. But we're going to focus on is really reasons why it can really be a good bang for your buck and really worth doing. Because one of the reasons why, you know, coming here with Rob and hiring him and having him give us a tour is one of the big things is he knows what he's talking about. And one of the big issues I've seen when I've traveled is you go see your buddies and they all think that they know the city, right?
Sure.
And the thing is most of the times your friends don't know the city because they go to work from 9 to 5 and then they go watch TV at night, and then maybe on the weekends their cousins come and they show a little bit of it. And if you really want to know something, your friend probably doesn't know as much as a real guide. So that's why I really want you to look at is just think about some of these reasons why it's a good idea to hire a guide. So first reason, who would like to start first? You want to start first?
I'll go ahead and start first. So the first reason is efficiency. So when you come to a new city, when you come to Washington, D.C., you're only going to have a limited amount of time here. And a lot of people don't plan for long enough trips. Honestly, I recommend at least 3 days, but up to a week, you know, and you're still not going to be able to see everything. And so if you are on a limited schedule, hiring me to show you around, I can show you all of these monuments and memorials on the National Mall in 3 hours or less. Now, I've heard other people who have come and they said, geez, if I had just been wandering around on my own, it would have taken me 6 hours and I wouldn't have any idea what I saw when I was going around. So as far as efficiency goes, I know the most efficient route. I can take you from one to the next and tell you everything that you need to know, and we can end just on time.
And that's another thing is all the stuff that he does know, actually, if you really want to get more out of a visit for a private guide, they know their stuff. So they can go into that history. So if you want more of the academic background, they can help you in that respect. I know Jocelyn's loved talking about the history of the architectural history and stuff, and that's been really cool for her. But the thing is, they know their stuff. So they know the who's, the what's, the where's, the why, the when's. It's not just facts. They're not just reading off, here are the 10 facts about Washington, D.C. It's the information. What do you say?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that people ask me all the time is, why should I sign up to take a tour when I can look up all these monuments on Wikipedia and the facts are free and walking around the National Mall is free, so why should I hire a tour guide and pay for that service? And really, you could certainly look up all the facts on Wikipedia and you could walk around by yourself. I'm not gonna say that you can't do that, but the tour is about more than facts. It's about stories as well.
Yeah, and that's one thing. When we've taken tours, and we've gone tours in Ecuador, we've gone in Brazil, we've gone in China, Japan, other places, and here is you get so much more out of it. It's more than just, like we said, the facts. It's the stories that really make these places come alive, and that's where a guide can really do a great job.
Yeah, I mean, you can look up what year the Lincoln Memorial was built and why Lincoln is sitting down and that the Gettysburg Address is inside, but I can tell you about the significance of why the Gettysburg Address is inside and what some of the other stuff means. And the other thing is that when you come on a tour, especially a private tour, you can ask as many questions as you want.
Yeah. And Jocelyn's been doing that because her big thing, like I said, is architectural history, and she's been hitting them boom, 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 and he knows his stuff. And that's one thing I've always liked. Everywhere I've gone in the world, we've hired private guides. They know their stuff. I don't know how it is here, but like when we were in Ecuador, they get certifications for different stuff from geology to food to stuff like that. And so they get these trainings and stuff, and they can really do a lot more and talk about a lot more. And so it really makes the visit really come alive. Another thing that's really cool about private guides for me is the tailored nature of it, because we're here with our kids, and Rob knows that we can't hit 4,000 things with kids, so we can adjust to that. I mean, you want to say something about that?
Yeah, so when you do a private tour, you really do get a custom experience. And what I mean by that is that everybody has different interests, everybody has a different sense of what they know, and I don't have the same tour for someone who's visiting from another country who doesn't know that much about American history that I do for someone who majored in history and knows a lot of stuff. I have two completely different tours, and actually I have a lot more than just 2 tours. I can tailor it to exactly what you're looking for, and that's not something that you can really get in a big group because they have to give one generic tour that everybody can kind of relate to, and for some people it's too much, and for other people it might not be enough.
And the thing is whether you're doing a bus tour kind of thing or a private tour kind of thing, ask those questions because they're here to help you out.
Yeah, there's actually nothing more boring for me than to take you around to all the monuments and tell you a whole bunch of stuff and to you just kind of give me a blank stare back, right? So the more questions that people ask, the more that it's engaging for me and you, and it really is a better experience. And so don't feel shy about that sort of thing. Ask away. There's no question that I haven't heard, I think, at this point.
Yeah, because they can give you like the who's and what's, but they also give you, like, hey, where should you go eat? You know, do I need to make reservations? This kind of stuff. They can really help you out. And another thing, like for me, what I've seen when we've gone around the world and talked to people who've done tours, one of the reasons why people sign up for tours is, one, they don't know the country, so they're kind of scared. Like, I don't know anything about China. I don't speak the language. I just want to do a tour to make it easier. Well, sometimes the tours do make it easier because they can handle, some do their transportation, some just do a tour, some just do take you to one museum. There's lots of different kind of tours out there. And so find one that can help you, because if you're worried about something, they can help you out.
So sometimes I actually think that the title tour guide is not entirely accurate to what I do. I do give a tour, I certainly do that, but I also kind of see myself as your concierge.
Yeah.
So when you come on my tour, you don't just have to ask me questions about the monuments or the city, what's right in front of us. You can ask me about where to eat. You can tell me about what hotel you're staying in, and I can tell you what's good that's nearby and make recommendations based on that, or how long you're going to be in town and things that you might want to see or that you might want to skip now that you're here.
Yeah, and that's what's cool about it, because sometimes they are just holding your hand, like, I'm worried to take me along, but the thing is, they do a great job. And for me, one of the best parts of these tour guides and getting the private guides is you really learn so much more about the city, that it's not just a collection of museums and monuments. It's a living, breathing city, and that's why tour guides and travel guides do a really great job. And I know they're not for everybody. I know a lot of people, like we're talking, you can do your own stuff. We do a lot of our own things, but occasionally what's a place like DC. I love DC, but I haven't been here since 8th grade, and I love U.S. history, and I want to know more about it. I find a guide like Rob to help me out, or whether it's the guys we've had in Ecuador or other countries, they really just bring so much more out of it that it makes a great experience. So